Jai Anilo Premadano Karamakacho Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Dhananjana Salakaya Chaksurumilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadanti Swapandantikam. So, we offer our most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, His Trans illustrious founder Acharya, and our beloved spiritual master. And we are praying for His mercy that we can speak the message of Bhagavad Gita as it is. And we are also offering our obeisances unto the most devoted follower of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, who has revealed the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the people of this world. Today we have a very dear, most beloved God brother of mine, His Holiness Kirihari Swami Maharaj. Come here to bless us with his association, and he will be giving Srimad Bhagavatam class tomorrow morning. So we request everyone to please come and attend. I think many people are not working on Saturday, so I should be able to come. After the reading of the deities is 7 o'clock, then Prabhupada's Guru Puja, and then His Holiness will be giving class, so everyone should come to hear it. Also, remember that tomorrow throughout the day, is the appearance day of Lord Nrsimha Day. The magazine Back to Godhead has incorrectly, and also the calendar which someone printed, was printed in Dallas, incorrectly says that you only have to fast until noon, but this is not correct. You have to fast till the sunset, which means about this time. So don't break your fast because Back to Godhead said noontime. It was a mistake, and we have informed Back to Godhead, and hopefully next year they will get it right. So we are celebrating also tomorrow, I believe, Chandan Yatra. Actually, Chandan Yatra can be a number of days, but tomorrow you will be seeing the deities. Krishna deities will all be covered with chandan. So once in a year you get a special darshan. So this is another reason to come tomorrow morning. If you don't come tomorrow morning, you're not going to see it. And you won't get to hear His Holiness Kirihari Swami giving class so easily. So you get double benefit. Plus tomorrow is Lord Nrsimha Dev's appearance day. So you should come. I think everybody must come. Tomorrow is so important day. And tomorrow evening we will be giving a lecture at the house. It is in Clear Lake at the house of Ganesham Sharma. And I will be telling the narration of Lord Nrsimha Dev's pastime. And then we will have a feast there. So all devotees should come for that program. You can get the address. It's on the bulletin board how to get there. So please everyone come for tomorrow's programs. Now we have completed a certain section of Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter, which described how we could understand Krishna's being manifest in different aspects of the material creation. Now, in the next part of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 13, Krishna is going to explain how it is that one becomes bewildered by the modes of nature. Already Krishna has explained how the material energy, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, is a separated energy. And it's called apara prakriti. And we have heard that the individual souls are para prakriti, superior energy. Yet we see that although we are superior energy, still we become bewildered by the inferior energy. How this happens is now discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is it important knowledge? Because if you understand how it happens, then you can avoid it happening to you, and you can remain above the material energy, transcendental. Trivir Unamayer Bhadir Edi Sarvaminam Jagat Mohitam Navijanati Mabhedya Param Abhyayam. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Krishna therefore says now that there are three modes, Sattva-guna, Rajagun, and Tamagun. And these three modes condition one to living in this world. How do the modes work? First, they affect the mind and intelligence and the ego. Because in the process of material nature, in material creation, we see that after the formation of the Mahatattva, the Mahatattva begins to differentiate itself according to the goodness, passion, and ignorance which is affecting the entire material creation. And the material mind, the intelligence, and ego are formed. This is a general creation of mind, the principle of mind, intelligence, and ego. Now there are 8,400,000 species of life. And each of them has a different subtle body composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. In the lower species of life, that subtle body is very restricted. What is the question of much intelligence for an amoeba? Very little. And as we go higher in the strata of species, we find the subtle body becomes more and more developed. But in every life form, there is some subtle combination of the modes of material nature working. So Krishna's energy, Maya Prakriti, this Maya material energy, consisting of the three material modes, Maya Dekshena Prakrite Suyate Sajanachanam Mitunakni Konde Jagati Parivartate. This is my energy, Krishna says, and it produces all the different types of species. Subtle bodies are given, and gross bodies. We always give the example of how an artist paints a variety of scenery, but with three primary colors. There are three primary colors: red, blue, and yellow. Everybody learns this. I remember when I was in public school, they told me if you mix yellow, and whereas Radhika, if you mix yellow and blue, what color does it produce?
Green.
Huh?
Green.
Who said that?
That's a
Huh?
That's a
Anyway, it is transcendental. Now what color? Green. Right. Yes, everyone knows. Even children know that with their crayons, if they put a blue and a yellow crayon together, it makes green. So 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. The artist begins to mix these, and slowly but surely produces many varieties on the palette. In the same way, the supreme artist, Krishna, mixes Satagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun together. By mixing these together, produces 8,400,000 species of life. So, by doing this, a person becomes conditioned. The false ego, for example, begins to think in terms of the body. The false ego, the living entity, the consciousness of the living entity, identifies itself with the body. And the senses, the mind and the senses. According to the senses that we have, we interpret sense objects. We taste something, we find it palatable. Because we have the tongue of a human, we think rasgulla is sweet. But a hog does not find rasgulla to be palatable. Rather, a hog thinks stool is palatable, because it has the tongue of a pig. So whatever the senses are, just like our eyes, when we see another human being, we think, oh, here is a possible friend. But when a tiger sees a human being, it thinks, here is my next meal. So the eye, each one has an eye. Each one has the ability to see, but they interpret their ability, they interpret the objects differently, according to the kind of mind, the kind of intelligence, ego, and ultimately the senses which they have gotten through the modes of nature. So, actually it's difficult to say what is reality. Is a human being a friend, or is a human being our next dinner? If we allow ourselves to answer this question, it will depend on who answers it. Just like for a murderer, a human being may be the source, killing a human being may be his source of income. But for a physician, keeping the human being alive is his source of income. So everyone has got a different interpretation of vision, according to their mentality. Therefore, we cannot get standard information from a conditioned soul, whether the conditioned soul is a lower species or even human. The only way we can get accurate information is by understanding through Shabda, transcendental sound. Shabda Pramana. The evidence of the Vedas is considered standard knowledge, and anything else is considered speculative, and it is subject to error. A human being is subject to 4 defects. The senses are not perfect, they make mistakes, they become illusions, and they get cheated, or they have a tendency to cheat. And therefore there's every possibility of mistaking the information which is coming in. So to gain accurate understanding, we accept the statements of Shastra, which is above the 3 modes of nature. Krishna is above the 3 modes of nature. Because he says, Maya Dakshina Prakrite, this is my Maya, Mama Maya. Devi Yesha Gunamaya, Mama Maya Dharataya. It is my energy, he says. So if it belongs to him, he's above it. He's not affected by it, which means his words and his thoughts are not affected by Maya. Similarly, anyone who repeats the words of Krishna is also above Maya. And anyone who lives according to the teachings of Krishna is also beyond Maya. Mamevaye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. Those who surrender unto me, they're not affected by this Maya. How do we surrender unto Krishna? That is going to be explained in the next verse. How one becomes liberated. Devi yesha gunamai, mama maya viratyaya, mam eva ye prapadyante, maya etam tarantite. This is text 14. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So how one becomes liberated is now going to be explained by Krishna. First of all, we have to understand that certain conditioned souls are called nitya-baddha. Prabhupada says, the living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. The conditioned soul is therefore called nitya-baddha, or eternally conditioned. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy, because material energy is ultimately conducted by the Supreme Will. So it is very difficult to trace out when the conditioned soul has come into this material world and how he has become bound by the three modes of material nature. Even though he is of the superior nature, it is such a long time. Therefore you're having difficulty. People say, why is it so difficult to be Krishna conscious? Or they say, why do we make the rules so strict? Why do you have to insist on chanting 16 rounds? Why do I have to give up drinking tea? Why do I have to do this? Why? Because you have been in material clutches. It's so difficult. The material energy is so strong. For so many lifetimes we have been here, we can't even remember our home. Now you know, I live in Sugar Land, or I live in, wherever, this place or that place. I live on 34th Street, 34.5 Street. Now you can say, I live here, I live there. But where is our original home? That is very hard to remember. So long ago. It's not hard to remember. Just like when I was in New York recently, I went back to see the house where I grew up. I want to see, is it still there? So I had the driver take me there. Our devotee, Sri Rupa, she was driving. I told her where to go, and we went, Garanga, my secretary, and I went there, and Bhakti and Shakti got and we went, and there was the house, and I remember, because it was only 30, 40 years ago. It's very easy to remember 30, 40 years. But how are you going to remember 30 million births? 30,000 births. How can you remember 30,000 births ago, where you're from? It's impossible. Therefore, the process requires continuous effort to be Krishna conscious. It is not an easy thing to get out. Just like we see, here we are in Houston, Texas, right? The place of NASA, right? This is where they do blast off here. But they have anyway, I don't blast off here, right? They blast off in Cape Canaveral. They blast off in what's that place in Arizona?
Cape Canaveral.
No.
Florida.
No. There's another one that blasts off. Anyway, at least, how difficult it is to get a rocket out of the Earth's atmosphere because of the gravitational pull. But you're proposing that the soul should leave the universe. No scientist has ever proposed that they can get a spaceship out of the universe. They're going to go to this planet, that planet, or they're going to take some photos of some far distant. But where is the statement? They're going to go out of the universe. As we understand the universe, nobody has ever made such a proposal. Yet the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is making this proposal to blast the soul out of the material universe. And people say, do I really have to give up drinking tea? You are proposing such a difficult thing, and you want to still be able to drink tea. How is it possible? So much effort, so much tapasya is going to have to be done to become Krishna conscious. It's not an easy thing. And if you're not prepared to make that effort, then, just like the spaceships, they go up, they come down. And Krishna says that you can go up to the higher planets and come down. Prabhupada said this once, that even if you don't become fully Krishna conscious, at least you'll get birth on a higher planet. And after so many thousands of years, you can come back again. Is that what we want? No. We don't want to be tempted with heavenly delights. Heavenly delights up in Svargaloka, or heavenly delights by, the proposal that I will, get a better house, or better house, or a better car. I'll pull it through. All of these proposals are temptations. We should resist these temptations. No, don't tempt me. Come on, Krishna says. Go to Svargaloka. Go to, where's the best place in Houston? What's the best subdivision? River Oaks. $2 million house in River Oaks. And a Lexus for your wife, a BMW for you, or at least a Mercedes. Every 6 months vacation in Hawaii. What else? What other things? I don't know. So many things. Dr. Dinger has arrived. Hare Krishna. Good to see you and your assistant. So many temptations may come our way. But in every case, we have to be sober. Very sober. Nice to see you. Here's the door. Have a seat. Dr. Junior invited me to his office and showed me all pictures of Krishna there. Huh? And Bhagwan Rishikesh. I thought I had come into India to visit Bhagwan and Rishikesh. So, yes, the material world is like this. Houston, Texas, River Oaks, BMW, Lexus car, and people think this is what I want. But a devotee has to be sober. And a devotee has to think, no, there's something much higher than this. Don't tempt me like this. Maya deity will tempt you. Then if she sees that you're not falling for this temptation, she'll say, okay, how about going to Svargaloka? In Svargaloka, in heavenly planets, you can live thousands of years. You can get a body that never grows old. You can enjoy heavenly delights beyond anything comparable in this material world. Many people do this. Many people. When I used to preach in India, I would visit many people whose interest was Svargaloka. They would have their wife do puja every day. And they would go, make money at work, and their wife would do the puja, and when I would discuss with them, they wanted Svargaloka. This was their goal. Then I would show them the Bhagavad Gita, that you may go to the heavenly planets, but after a certain time, you have to come back again in this material world and start all over again. This is compared to be like a process of, going up, coming down, just like we see in so many Ferris wheel rides. Up and down, up and down. And this is going on for so many lifetimes. Then, if you don't want that, the next temptation is given. What is that? Brahman. You can become one with God, merge with God. Impersonal realization. No more problems of having to deal with others. No more anxiety will be there. Now you don't have to worry anymore. You can lose your individuality and become one with the Supreme. We are suffering so much from interpersonal dealings. Sometimes we deal with our patients and we get a headache. Sometimes we deal with customers, we get a headache. Sometimes we deal with our boss, we get a headache. Sometimes we deal with our wife, we get a headache. Sometimes our children give us a headache. Sometimes we give ourselves a headache. So the best solution is just eliminate individuality. Everything becomes one. This is Brahman. Again, a sober devotee will say, I don't want this. If you offer Hanumanji, you can become one and lose your individuality. Then Hanuman would say, what about Ram? Will I be able to serve him? Never mind, Hanuman. There will be no more problems for you. Everything will just be one. Hanuman will say, no, thank you. If you tell Sri Narad Muni, you take Brahman realization, then he'll say, but what about my service to Narayana? No, I don't want this. If you offer Lord Shiva Brahman realization, then he'll say, how can I accept this? I am always chanting the glories of the Lord, doing kirtan. If I have oneness, there will be no kirtan anymore. I don't want this. Any Vaishnava, any devotee will never accept Brahman. And what is that Brahman? When Krishna kills the Asuras, they go to that Brahman. So how can Brahman be so desirable? But this is the final snare, the final trap where the offering is, go to Brahman. The devotee says no. Then what do you want? The devotee says, my Lord, I want you. Then so many tests start. Because this is a very big thing to say, my Lord, I want you. Because who is that you? Who is Krishna? Who is the Supreme Lord? The Lord of everything. The Lord of the goddess of fortune. Not one fortune. One goddess of fortune. Lakshmi Sahasra Sadhata. So many goddesses of fortune. Thousands of goddesses of fortune are serving Krishna. Krishna is such a personality that when you say, my Lord, I want you, then so many tests have to be passed. Just like to become a doctor. I remember our Dr. Bhakti was taking her doctor's exam. So many tests. She had to pass one test, the other another. Then residency. So much trouble she took to become a doctor. But to speak of going into the spiritual world and entering into the kingdom of God, it will be troublesome. So troublesome. So troublesome that Krishna has already said at the beginning of this 7th chapter, Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatamati siddhanam kaschit mandati tatutaha. Out of many thousands of those who endeavor for this truth, hardly one will become perfect. And out of thousands of those who become perfect, hardly one will know me in truth. Very rare. Very rare. This Bhava Bhakti is so rare. This is one of the rarities of it. Very, very, very difficult to get. Bhava Bhakti. And Prema Bhakti? What is the quality of Prema Bhakti? It can control Krishna. That person who controls the whole universe becomes controlled by the Prema Bhakti. Therefore, is there any wonder that we have to go through so many tests to come to this stage of perfection? And just to take initiation, we have to pass the Guru's test And sometimes it seems so difficult. We're just about there, and then again we have to get more testing. So much testing is coming. What is the basis of bhakti? Shraddha, faith, devotion. Faith in what? Faith. Ado shraddha tata sadhu. Sadhu sangha. Faith in the association of sadhus is the basis of bhakti. If one does not have faith in the association of sadhus, then they cannot become a devotee. They cannot perform bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya means the practices of devotional life. Unless we have faith in the association of sadhus, we don't get the strength to practice Krishna consciousness. Because by seeing someone else who has that strength, then we think, now I understand how I can do it. However, if we are envious, it's not possible. In the 9th chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna that I'm going to speak to you the most confidential knowledge. What is that most confidential knowledge? How to get Krishna. And what is the qualification? Anasuyave, because you are non-envious. If a person is envious, they cannot get the association of sadhus. It's not possible. Because when you see someone who's more advanced, you immediately want to pull them down. The nature of envy is that when you see something that someone else has that you don't have, you desire that thing. And you wish that they should not have it. So you destroy it. Therefore, demons are persons who always destroy the good qualities. And we see, like when Ramchandra was called with Lakshmana to destroy the demons. What were the demons doing? They were ruining the sacrifice. They were envious the sacrifice was being performed. And it's still going on today. The spreading of the Krishna Consciousness movement is constantly under attack. Normally it's under attack from outside, now it goes under attack from inside. And the demons go from outside, and demons take their birth inside. Very clearly written, in the Kali Yuga, demons will take their birth as Brahmas. It's very clearly stated in the scripture. That in the Kali Yuga, demons will take their birth as Brahmins, and they will harass the Vaishnavas. Very clearly stated in the scripture. But it's not surprising that even in the Krishna Consciousness movement, people become Brahmins and then actually reveal their quality. And they attack, what do they attack? Faith. They immediately try to undermine the faith of faithful, simple-hearted devotees. This is the nature. This is all the Jnana persons do this activity. It is a very standard activity. So, this type of testing will come. During Srila Prabhupada's time, so many tests came. I told you how one time Prabhupada was incorporating our society. And he clearly said, each society registered separately. And some devotee fell under the control of lawyers and said, no, make one umbrella corporation. Prabhupada said, don't do that. Because if you all are under one corporation, if one problem comes to that corporation, all your temples will be affected. So Prabhupada knew exactly, separate. Another time, the moon landing. Famous moon landing. Prabhupada's secretary said, Prabhupada, look, they're landing on the moon. Prabhupada said, I don't believe it. The secretary said, I'm watching them walking on the moon. Prabhupada said, I don't believe it. He asked him, he said, what are you seeing? He said, it's like a desert. He said, I don't believe it. It's not the moon. Because Prabhupada knew from the Vedas what the moon is described as. He said, they may have landed somewhere, but it's not the moon which is described in the Vedas. You may call it the moon, but it's not the same moon that the Vedas are speaking of, because that is a very advanced civilization. The devotee said, he just couldn't believe it, and he left. and lost faith in his point, the secretary of council, and he left. And later on, he became a Christian saint. He became a Christian, and he was called Saint something. He called himself Saint something. He was a nice boy, but he did not have faith. He got tested. His faith got tested. I think every devotee's faith must get tested. Just like in India, I remember they used to have two types of steel. When we did construction, because I was overseeing the construction in our first projects in Mayapur and then in Vrindavan. One type of steel was ordinary steel and the other was called Tor steel. Tor steel means they twisted the steel. The steel gets twisted. You see some straight pieces and others twisted. The twisted steel was more expensive and was much stronger. They said it could resist much stronger force. Tor steel. So, similarly, a good devotee is a person who has withstood, who has been tested many, many times. Look at Arjuna. Didn't he get tested? Can you see anyone who could get more tested than Arjuna? Arjuna, Krishna said, now you have to fight this battle. Arjuna said, I don't want to fight. He told Krishna, let me out of this fight. Let me just be renounced. Krishna said, no way. You have seen how sinful your family members are. Your grandfather, look at what he allowed. The Draupadi was almost attempted to be disrobed. Bhishma did not protest. Duryodhana, Sakuni, so sinful. The whole battlefield was full of friends, relatives, teachers, and well-wishers of Arjuna. And Krishna brought him right in the middle to look at who he had to fight with. But a person who is a strong devotee can take such a test. No matter how difficult it may be. Queen Kunti, what did she pray? More tests. She said, I want more tests. Why? She said, because when I get these tests, I become humbled. And I remember you more and more. What is the ultimate test? What is the most difficult thing? Not this body, not the mind, not the intelligence, but the ego. It is most difficult to give up the false ego. And that false ego makes us very proud. Very, very proud. It's very difficult to give up false ego. But as long as we are not very humble, and Krishna will put us into such a humbling condition that we have to beg for mercy. Who is the most fortunate of the Vaishnavas? That person who begs mercy. But no one wants to be a beggar. People think, what? Me? Become a beggar? But look at Narottam Thakur. Look at Bhaktivedanta Thakur. Look at their prayers. They present themselves as a beggar. When Srila Prabhupada was crossing the Atlantic Ocean, he wrote a poem in which he says, I am simply begging now. And Prabhupada cites the example of one great politician in Calcutta. Who was it? C.R. Das. I forget who it was exactly. I don't remember, but those who are from Bengal, if I mention his name, they would know. But I don't forget his name. Anyway, he was a big politician. He became a devotee. And when he became a devotee, he used to go and beg alms from his political opponents. Prabhupada cites this example of how a Vaishnava becomes humble. How can he become so humble? Because he has the shelter of Krishna. Because he has Krishna shelter. Krishna can, and this is the most beautiful quality of a Vaishnava, is his humility. And what is the nature of the demons? They're asuras, they're pride. I shall, so much have I done today, and so much have I done in the past, and so much will I do, and the whole world will come to know of my strength. This is exactly the mood of Hiranyakasipu and Rava. And what does a Vaishnava say? I simply take shelter of Krishna. Just like we see in the example of Durvasha Muni, a big, powerful mystic. He came and he saw the quality of Maharaj Ambarish. Maharaj Ambarish was such a saintly person, and Durvasha Muni became envious of him. And even though he was so powerful mystic that he could go all the way into the spiritual world, still he could not match and deal with this great devotee, Maharaj Ambarish. Durvasha Muni became angry with Maharaj Ambarish. He did not understand the quality of a Vaishnava. Maharaj Ambarish had the Sudarshan Chakra of Krishna living with him in the home. Krishna personally had Sudarshan Chakra installed in the house of Ambarish Maharaj to always protect his devotee. Durvasha Muni didn't know this. He came and finding what he thought, it wasn't a real fall, but he thought it was a fall. He immediately he took a hair from his head, threw it on the ground, and a big demon came up. And that demon immediately was going to attack Maharaj Ambarish. But what happened? The Sudarshan Chakra just came, burned the demon. And as soon as it finished burning the demon, it immediately began to chase Durvasha Muni. And he felt the heat coming after him. He went up to Brahmaloka. He begged Brahma, save me. Brahma said, I can't do anything. He went to Shiva Loka. Shiva said, I can't do anything for you. Then he went right into Vaikuntha, which is unheard of. How a person who is not a pure devotee, still he was so powerful he could somehow get into Vaikuntha. But even Lord Narayan said, there's nothing I can do. The Supreme Lord, God Himself, said, I can't help you. There's only one person who can help you and save you, and that's the devotee that you offended. Then he came back down, and he fell flat on the ground before Ambarish Maharaj. And he held on, begged him, please, please, please. And what did Maharaj Ambarish say? He said, I can't stand to see you in this condition. Whatever pious assets I have, you can take it. Then Durvasha Muni felt this big. And he understood what is the position of a Vaishnava. But try to understand how much Durvasha Muni for 1 year suffered with that Sudarshan burning. And that 1 year wasn't just one earthly year, because he went through the heavenly planets. And understand, when he surrendered, he surrendered. It was not just on the lips that he said this. And he only offended one devotee. Now try to appreciate the position when so many devotees become offended. What is the position? Krishna cannot save you without Krishna. You can chant, you can worship a deity, nothing will save you. Because each and every person who you have offended has to forgive you. And this is the science of Krishna consciousness. This is the science of Bhakti, and there is no alternative. It cannot be changed, these rules. When Haridas Thakur, the great Acharya Haridas, who was a very great Acharya who chanted the holy name, he was born in a Muslim family. The Muslims, they were so upset with his chanting of Hare Krishna that they began to take him and whip him and beat him. And it is said that the marks of the whip that came on Haridas Thakur's back, he didn't feel it. But in Vaikuntha, suddenly Lakshmi saw on the back of Lord Narayan, red strips began to come. The Lord Himself felt the pain when His devotee was being punished. Therefore, Prabhupada said that when Jesus was put on the cross, it was the Lord who felt pain. Those nails that went into the body of Jesus, they were brought into the body of the Lord. So, how the Lord becomes pained when the devotees become offended. And who is the devotee? I already said, even a person who is just beginning, when they're like a baby. A new devotee is like a baby. A baby has to be cared for so much. A baby can only live by drinking milk. If a baby is fed any other food, usually for 6 months, the baby should not drink anything but the mother's milk. If such a young devotee is poisoned by trying to break their faith in Guru and Vaishnavas, what nature is this? Who is it that put poison on their breast and fed Krishna? But Putana. So a young devotee, if they get in any way affected like this, they can be killed so easily. Krishna could not be killed, but ordinary baby, Putana killed so many babies. So how careful we have to be. Now, how careful we have to be with all the young devotees and protect their faith, because there are Putanas now that are going poison. This is such a good opportunity. I say this again and again. Krishna now is going to give everyone a great test. He's going to test the young devotees in their faith in this movement. He's going to test the older devotees in their faith in defending the parampara. And he's going to test even persons who are sinful, that you have a chance to surrender. Nityananda Prabhu delivered Jagai and Madai. Maharaj forgave the Russian woman. So even a person who has been sinful, if he becomes very, very humble, and begs, and begs, and begs, one Vaishnava after another, then he will be forgiven. Just like Jagai and Madai, they were forgiven, and Lord Chaitanya embraced them. And all the Vaishnavas embraced them. Do you know what Jagai and Madai did afterwards? Do you know what? Where's our picture of Jagai and Madai? You know what they did? You go to Mayapur and you will see there are two gods. One is called Jagai God and Madai God, especially Madai God. Madai, he built a god, and he would stay at the god, and he would clean the god. He would clean up after the Vaishnavas. He took this as his service, that I will now become the cleaner of the place where the Vaishnavas are bathing and other things. He took the most humble position. And why? Not just to be forgiven for his offenses, but he actually felt so humble. He thought, I want to simply serve them now. I don't want any big position. I don't want anything. I just want to serve. Because he realized that he had the Sudarshan chakra of Lord Chaitanya was about to cut his neck off. And Nityananda Prabhu saved him. And then he realized that it's the Vaishnavas who have saved him. So he thought, I simply want to serve them now. And he was forgiven. This is a very difficult test. Everyone has to undergo whatever test. There's a saying, the higher you are, the harder you fall. Or pride comes before the fall. So somehow we have to give up this pride. If we can't give up pride, there's no way to rise in Krishna consciousness. Humility is the most important quality. And I say again, please don't mistake that when a Vaishnava fights on behalf of the Guru Parampara, don't think that he's being arrogant. Don't think that Arjuna was proud when he was fighting. He was most humble. To defend the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, to defend Dharma is not proud, it's not pride, it's humility, it's the service attitude towards the Guru Parampara. So, yes, we can cross beyond the modes of material nature, as this verse explains. But then we have to be willing to pay that price. It is very, very steep price. It begins in a simple way. Everyone do their service according to their ability. That's the simple point. Just like I said, when I met Srila Prabhupada, I said, what do I have to do? He said, it's very easy, just chant Hare Krishna. I can say with all love that if I had no one ever cheated me as much as Prabhupada. I say that. You know, he said it's the simplest thing. It is the hardest. But he knew, come on, just come up, chant Hare Krishna. Read a little bit, chant, take some prasad. Do a little service. But the tests that I have had to undergo, very difficult tests. Very difficult tests, I can say. Very difficult, and still to this day, very difficult tests. I get attacked so much. Everybody knows it, they can read the letters. Worldwide, I have not done anything but my name and fame is being totally destroyed. At least attempt is being made. There's so many bad things. I don't know where the person gets his idea, but so many bad things. But I simply have to tolerate it. A very big test. Because what is a sannyasi? His sannyasi depends upon his reputation. The only thing a sannyasi has is his reputation. It is said a little bit of spot on the sannyasi's dhoti, or character, is like a black spot on the dhoti. And nowadays, you know, you can give the dog a bad name and hang it. Nobody bothers to inquire, is it true? Nobody bothers to go into the detail, is it true? Just, oh, well, it's said, it must be true. So-and-so said, so-and-so said. It's so easy. Still, I will not stop at Krishna Consciousness devotional service to Prabhupada. Why should I stop? When Dhruva Maharaj was fighting, he was avenging the death of his brother, stepbrother. The Rakshasas put so many illusions around him, and Dhruva Maharaj never became distracted. I consider all of these letters just like Rakshasa magic. For me, it's all Rakshasa magic. It's just created by Rakshasa type persons. And I'm simply fixed on serving my Guru. Prabhupada wants that this project should be built. So I think that all kinds of Rakshasa magic is being attempted to stop the building of this project. And I become so happy because I realize this project is so important that Kali is really trying to stop it. Prabhupada told me that when you get a lot of opposition, it means you're really doing some substantial service to Krishna. So I know this project must be very, very important. I'm sure, because so much effort is being made to undermine this project. People are criticizing the leaders, the president here, they're criticizing the GBC member, myself, they're criticizing the Guru, and for no genuine reason. Just criticize, break people's faith. And somehow stop it. And I think, oh, what a great opportunity. This must be so wonderful. The result of building this project is going to be like a huge chakra, Sudarshan chakra will be illuminating the city. Because I'm seeing there are many temples in Houston, but still I think there's something special about this Hare Krishna movement. There's something very special. Perhaps it is the philosophy that is being very clearly spoken. Perhaps it is Srila Prabhupada himself. Perhaps it is Radha-Nila Madhava. Perhaps it is that because we don't make communal conscious plays that only this section or only this section, but we try to include all people. Perhaps it is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Krishnadas Kaviraj says, that if you don't worship Lord Chaitanya, then you can't worship Krishna in this age. Because Krishna has come as Lord Chaitanya, and if you ignore Lord Chaitanya, your worship of Krishna has no value. Whatever the reason may be, something very special must be going on here. So I welcome these challenges. As Kunti Devi said, I welcome the difficulties. May they come more and more and more. Because more and more I have to depend on you, Krishna. More and more I have to depend on my Guru. So it's so good. When you get a victory that's easily achieved, you don't appreciate it. But when you get a victory that is most difficult to achieve, that victory is so sweet. So one day when this whole project is built, we will all sit together and we will remember this, and remember this problem, and remember how we crossed over this difficulty. We'll all be able to remember these things. Now we just have to decide whose side we are on. Just like in the Battle of Kurukshetra, everyone got a choice. Nobody forced anybody to be on one side or the other. Everyone had to choose. Bhishma chose. Drona chose. Karna chose. And the Pandavas, they chose. They both came for Krishna's help. Duryodhana and Arjuna came for Krishna's help. Then, what happened? Arjuna sat where? By the feet of Krishna. And Duryodhana thought, I'll sit by Krishna's head. But when Krishna woke up, what did he see? He saw Arjuna. Huh? Although I don't know how he did that, because when I wake up, I always look up. But anyway, Krishna looked down, because it's unhealthy. And what did Arjuna say? He said, Krishna could understand they both want my help. So, what is it that you want? Krishna and Arjuna said, I just want you. And Duryodhana said, what a fool this Arjuna is. He could have taken the whole army, and he just took this Krishna. And Duryodhana said, I want your arm. I want your strength, your arms. And that's what happened. It didn't matter. There could have been 1 million Bhishmas, and they could not have defeated Arjuna. Arjuna is so powerful. Why? Because of faith. Such strong faith. It said that faith can move mountains. Even doctors will say that if a person has faith, sometimes they can overcome a disease which is impossible to overcome. And they can't explain it, even medically. Sometimes a person can miraculously heal. Faith, if it can work on a material body, what to speak of in spiritual activity for Krishna's service. So Krishna is trying to make our faith strong and steady. Therefore he has created these situations. He has given these opponents and challenges to make our faith steady. And if you have found that your faith is weak, don't matter. Now take the lesson and strengthen it now. Just like if a man is sick, the beginning of recovery is to acknowledge you have a disease. The beginning of recovery is to admit you're sick. If you keep saying, I'm okay, or I'll be okay, you will never get healed. So if your faith is not strong, if your faith has shaken, what does it mean, weak faith? It means I'm still a young devotee. Because a strong devotee's faith does not get shaken. Then you have to admit, I'm not so advanced. You have to admit that. And this is humility. And this humility is tough. Because the most difficult thing is to be humble. It is the most difficult thing. Very difficult. And that's why we get these tests. To make us humble, to make us bow down. Without these tests, we cannot become humble. So, this divine energy of mind, consisting of the modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Here, okay. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the rope of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. he must be held by a person who is unbound. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated. Therefore, only Lord Krishna, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. I have my own experience only by Prabhupada's mercy and the mercy of the Vaishnavas, my God brothers and God sisters. Am I sitting here and am I in Krishna consciousness? I can say this without a doubt. I have made many mistakes, but I always took the corrective medicine. Always took the corrective. I always had faith that Prabhupada and my God brothers will always help me. Will always help me. So if it's true for me, then I say it's true for everyone else. If you're humble, Krishna will never reject us. But a proud person gets cut down very quickly. So my personal experience is that, it is human to make an error. But it is a divine thing to be forgiven. So one can be forgiven for an error. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, every endeavor is covered by some sort of fault. In this world, it's impossible not to make some mistake. But if we request the help of Guru and Vaishnavas, the mistake may be corrected. But understand, there's a difference between mistake and offense. Mistakes are one thing. Offenses are much more dangerous. Vaishnava of aparad is called elephant offense. Elephant offense means your devotion is called Bhaktivedanta, devotional creeper. When a small creeper plant is growing in the garden, if an elephant comes, it can trash and thrash and destroy the creeper. Similarly, if you commit offenses against the Vaishnavas, this is called a mad elephant, offense against your creeper. And what is Guru Aparad? It is called spiritual suicide. Spiritual suicide. It's not elephant offense. It's spiritual suicide. That's how serious it is. One disciple of Prabhupada, he wrote Prabhupada. He was a scholarly person. He said, now that I have been living in Vrindavan, I have met many saintly persons. He says, I am praying to you that you please bless me, that I can find a bona fide guru. As a disciple wrote Prabhupada, bless me that I can find a real guru. Prabhupada wrote him, I bless you that in 60,000 births you will not find him. And he immediately ordered in writing, in every temple of our society, do not let this person into the doors. Very heavy, right? Very heavy. But why was Prabhupada so heavy? And you can say that it's cruel. No. Prabhupada was like a father to us. And he was protecting us because he knew that if this person starts to speak like this everywhere, all the children, all the babies will be killed. He was so cautious. Not on one occasion, on a number of occasions, he had to write such letters. So this is not a new thing, that people will attack the Guru, will attack our movement. It's not a new thing. Prabhupada told me, you can never be stopped from outside. He said the Krishna Consciousness movement will never be stopped from outside. It can only be stopped inside. If the people lose faith, it will stop. And he also told me, don't be surprised who leaves. Be surprised who stays. Sometimes people say, how could this man do this? He brought me to Krishna consciousness. He was his senior to me. How could he do this? Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who it is. Be surprised who stays. It's more surprising who stays in Krishna consciousness. It's more surprising who continues to serve Krishna faithfully. Otherwise, for people to leave is very much expected. This is Kali Yuga. We expect such things. We're in a battle with Maya. When you're in a big battle, you expect that everyone will survive. A doctor knows some patients will not survive. He can battle with all of the diseases. Some cannot survive. So let us understand that, we are being called upon by the deity. We are being called upon by Srila Prabhupada. We are given an opportunity now to fight for Krishna. This is golden chance. Golden chance. Such opportunities, what does it say? Such opportunities come rarely. There's a verse that says this. Such fighting opportunities. I think it's in the Bible. Such fighting opportunities rarely come. Huh? It is Bhagavad Gita. This is I gave this verse to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was passing away in Vrindavan. He was in his last days. Right? And he could not get over this illness. So then I quoted from Bhagavad Gita to Prabhupada. You have to go to the West and preach. You are a fighter. You are a preacher. And if you die, it is glorious by going. And if you survive, I said, it is so wonderful. I said, we will not die there. I know that you won't. And Prabhupada immediately said, this is the answer. This is how it will. I must go to the West. And immediately, he was so ill, he was about to die, and he immediately got strength. Such fighting opportunities come so rare. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors to the heavenly planets. Anyway, we don't want to go to heaven. But that's very important. Happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought. We didn't look for this. Who could imagine that, a so-called sun will strike us like this? We didn't seek out this thing. It was very good. Okay. You give me an opportunity to serve my Father. I'm very happy. And I think all the other sons and daughters will also become very happy. Because they're going to get so much more strength and faith on their father, and on their grandfather, and on the deity, and on his son. This is how a real devotee responds. We are not that kind of, if you want to fight with us, we will not say anything back. We will just be silent. No. That is not Arjuna. That is not Krishna. No. We will speak the truth. We don't fight with fists. We don't fight in any way like that. We fight with the truth of Shastra. Stick on the strength of Shastra and defeat all of these opponents. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Radha Nila Madhava ki jai, Krishna Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Srila Gurudev ki jai. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Chakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Sri Radha Krishna Gopina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giti Govardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Vrindavan ki Navadip Dham ki Purnamahi ki Devi ki Devi ki Avera Bhakta Vrinda ki Sankirtan Yagda ki Adinam Sankirtan ki Bhaktivedanta Transcendental Book Distribution ki Most Beautiful Worshipful Lordship Sri Radha Madhava ki Sri Radha Girihari ji ki Giriraj Govardhana ki Most Merciful Sri Sri Gaurdhara ki Prabhupada ki Guru Vrinda ki Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Hari Krishna Dham ki Hari Krishna Dham ki Krishna Dham ki All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. Oh, Premanandi. Namaste
My eyes are.